Do you really know the person sleeping next to you? I mean, truly know them? Do you understand the quiet rhythm of their breath in the dark, the secrets hidden behind their morning smile, the true weight of their hand in yours? Or could it be that the person you trust most in this world is secretly, methodically dismantling your life? While you're making them coffee, while you're laughing together at a bad movie, while you're building a future in your mind, are they, in reality, setting fire to its foundations? This isn't a story about a stranger. This is about the enemy I welcomed into my home, my heart, and my bank account. And if what you're about to hear makes your own heart beat a little faster, if it makes you pause and look at your own life a little differently, then please do me a favor. Stay with me until the very end. Like this video if it touches you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because what I uncovered didn't just break my heart, it forever changed how I see love, trust, and the people I thought I knew best. And it might just protect you before it's too late. My name is Charlotte. Up until a year ago, my life looked like a blueprint I had carefully, joyfully drawn myself. I was a successful architect, a mother to a beautiful, energetic little boy named Liam, and, I believed with my whole soul, a cherished wife. I designed structures meant to stand for 100 years, to withstand hurricanes and earthquakes, but I never, ever imagined the most catastrophic collapse would happen within the four walls of my own home, engineered by the man I loved more than anyone. His name is David, and to understand the sheer depth of his betrayal, you have to understand how brilliantly he built my trust. It didn't happen with a grand gesture or a flashy promise. It was a slow, steady, 1,000-layer process. It was a path made of 1,000,000 tiny, reliable stones, and it led me right to the edge of a cliff I never saw coming. When we met, I was fiercely independent. I had my career, my own mortgage, my own complicated financial spreadsheets. David didn't try to tear that down. He admired it. He'd say, "I love how your mind works, Charlie. You see the world in structures and plans, and you have the power to make them real." He presented himself not as my savior, but as my partner, my teammate. The trust started small. If he said he'd be home at 7, he was walking through the door at 6:55. If he promised to fix the squeaky cabinet door on Saturday, he had his toolbox out before I'd even finished my coffee. In a world where people flake and cancel, his consistency was an anchor. I started to relax. I let my guard down. I began to believe, truly believe, that his word was his bond. Then he started to gently, kindly, take things off my plate. It felt like a gift. "You're so swamped with the Freeman project," he'd say, his voice full of concern. "Let me handle the car insurance renewal this year. I'll shop around, find us the best deal." And he would. He'd come to me with 3 different options, a clear printout comparing them, and we'd make the decision together. He did the same with the electricity bill, the internet, the property taxes. He framed it all as taking stress off my shoulders. And God, I was so grateful. I was drowning in deadlines and client demands, and his competence felt like a life raft. When I got pregnant with Liam, his role as the financial manager became set in stone. I was sick and exhausted for 9 straight months. The mere thought of logging into an online banking portal made my head spin. "I've got it, Charlie," he'd whisper, rubbing my back as I fought off another wave of nausea. "You just focus on growing our baby. I'll take care of everything else." And he did. The bills were always paid. The accounts were always balanced. He'd give me these cheerful, simplified updates. "We're doing great, honey. Lots of room in the savings." For when I take paternity leave, I had no reason to doubt him. He had never given me a single one. After Liam was born, the dynamic just cemented. I was a sleep-deprived zombie, my brain a fog of diaper changes, feeding schedules, and pediatrician appointments. David was the rock, the steady one. He managed it all. He set up Liam's college fund. He handled our investments. He filed our taxes. I was so deep in the trenches of motherhood, so profoundly thankful to have a partner who could hold the rest of the world together, that the thought of questioning the financial fortress he had built never once crossed my mind. He hadn't just earned my trust, he had constructed an entire world where doubting him would have felt like a sin. The lie was so perfect, I was living inside of it without a clue. The day it all shattered was a Tuesday, October 15th. I remember the light that morning was particularly beautiful, streaming in through that big bay window in the kitchen, the one I had designed myself. It lit up the whole room. I was holding my favorite mug, watching David chase a giggling Liam through the grass in our backyard. The scene was a postcard, a perfect photograph of the life we had built together. It was the ultimate testament to my trust in him. My phone buzzed on the countertop, a notification. Your credit score has changed. Normally, I'd have swiped it away without a second thought. I was busy, life was busy, but that morning, a cold, tight little knot formed in the pit of my stomach. A whisper of intuition, a primal tug of dread that I, in my comfortable, perfect life, almost ignored. My finger hovered over the screen. My heart did this weird little stutter. And then I tapped it. The banking app opened. It loaded for a second that felt like an hour, and then the number, it just appeared. It stared back at me, black and white and utterly monstrous. 452. I whispered the words. My voice didn't even sound like my own. It was thin, reedy, fragile. This has to be wrong. This is a glitch, a system error. My score was 815. I blinked, hard, sure my eyes were playing tricks on me. But the numbers didn't change. They just sat there, blurring into ugly black dots as tears of confusion and a rising cold panic began to well up. It felt like a cruel, sick joke. Then, my fingers, they started moving on their own, frantically, desperately tapping and swiping, searching for an explanation, for a mistake, for anything. And then I saw it, the full, unvarnished, horrifying truth, laid out in the coldest, hardest numbers imaginable. 5 different loans, all in my name, all significantly, glaringly overdue. A $35,000 car loan for a BMW I have never, ever seen. A $50,000 personal loan. The purpose was listed as debt consolidation. What debt? A $75,000 home equity line of credit taken out against our house. The house I thought was our safe place. And 2 credit cards, both maxed out at $25,000 each. I started adding it up in my head, the numbers clumsy and foreign. 35 plus 50 is 85, plus 75 is 160, plus 25, plus 25. $210,000. The words escaped my lips in a broken, hollow whisper. That number? It was impossible. It was a number from a nightmare. This cannot be happening. This is not my life. A violent tremor started in my hands, a deep, full-body shock that radiated out to my fingertips. My phone, this slick object that connected me to my world, became impossible to hold. It slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the hard tile floor. The sound was so loud, so jarring, so final in the morning quiet. No! The word was ripped from my throat. This has to be a mistake. This can't be my report. It can't be. But even as I was screaming, protesting, begging, this deeper, darker, more terrifying knowledge began to dawn on me, seeping into my bones. This was real. I bent down, my vision swimming, and picked up the phone. I forced myself to look, not just at the numbers, at the details. My full legal name, Charlotte Marie Evans. My social security number, our home address, my date of birth, every single piece. It was all there, it was all perfect, it was all me. And that's when the memories, these little, sharp, poisonous fragments from the past several months, started rising to the surface, stabbing at my mind with new, sinister meaning. The late nights at work. But when I'd call, his voice would sound hollow, distant. The unknown numbers on his phone bill he'd dismiss as work contacts or client calls. The cash that would occasionally go missing from my purse. I thought I was just forgetful. His sudden, helpful interest in my personal documents. Let me hold on to your passport for safekeeping. The bank statements that just stopped coming. "Let's go paperless," he had said. "It's better for the environment." Each thing on its own was nothing, a tiny speck. But together, they formed a monster that had been living in my house, sleeping in my bed. I looked at my phone, lying heavy in my palm. And then, I did something strange. I opened the camera, I hit record, I looked at my own pale, terrified face on the screen. "If you are watching this," I said, my voice surprisingly, terrifyingly calm, "if something in your gut is twisting, if you're in a similar situation, please, learn from my mistake. Do not wait. Do not explain it away. Do not make excuses for them. Take action today, right now." I waited, and it cost me $210,000. It cost me my financial security. It cost me my trust. Check your credit score. Look at your bank statements. Ask the questions you're afraid to ask. Because the truth, it won't just go away. My eyes lifted from the screen. They drifted down the hall, to the closed door of David's home office. The place where he always said, "Don't worry, honey. Everything is under control." That door was a threshold. On one side was the life I thought I had. On the other was the truth. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that today I was crossing it. I walked to the office and opened the door. The room was neat, tidy. His desk was clear. My eyes fell on the filing cabinet, the locked bottom drawer. I didn't hesitate. I went to the garage, got a crowbar, and I broke the lock. Inside was a simple manila folder. I opened it. Loan documents, my name, forged signatures, a BMW registration, and a small black notebook. I opened the notebook. It was a log of my life, my bank passwords, the answers to my security questions, my mother's maiden name, the name of my first pet. But on the last page, one sentence, written over and over again, the pen digging into the paper. "It's for us. It's for our future. It's for us." The sheer self-deception of it stole the air from my lungs. He had lied to himself first. I heard the back door open, Liam's happy squeal. "Daddy, more swings." David's voice, warm and loving, called back, "Okay, champ, after your snack." They were home. I stood there, surrounded by the proof. The grief was a physical weight, but beneath it, a fury was stirring. He hadn't just taken my money. He had taken my trust, my history, my peace. The footsteps came down the hall. The door opened. David stood there, Liam on his hip, a smile on his face that froze when he saw me. The crowbar, the open folder. His smile vanished. Panic flashed in his eyes. "Charlie, what?" he started, his voice turning defensive. "Liam, baby," I said, my voice steady, cutting him off. I pried my son from his arms and took him to the kitchen. When I returned, David was still staring at the folder. I didn't wait. "Where is the car?" I asked, my voice icy. He stammered. "Charlie, let me explain." "Explain this?" I held up the loan papers. "Explain how you practiced my signature? Was it before or after you promised to love me forever?" He broke then. "It was for us, for our future. I was investing. I was going to pay it back." "Don't," I whispered, venom in my tone. "You didn't do this for us. You did this to us. You lied. You stole. You committed fraud in my name." He was crying now, but his tears felt like a manipulation. "I'm sorry. We can fix this." "Get out," I said, the words quiet and absolute. He stared, stunned. "What?" "This is my home. Right now, it's a crime scene," I replied, my voice chillingly calm. "You can walk out that door, or I can call the police and have you arrested for identity theft. Your choice." The color drained from his face. He saw I was serious. I packed a bag for him and dropped it at the front door. He shuffled out, his eyes searching mine for mercy. He found none. "I love you, Charlie," he said, one last desperate lie. I didn't answer. I simply closed the door. The sound of the deadbolt engaging echoed like a gunshot. I slid down against the door, finally allowing the sobs to come. From the kitchen, I heard Liam babbling happily. After 60 seconds, I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and stood up. My first call was to my sister, Maya. "It's David," I choked out. "He's gone." I told her everything. "I'm on my way," she said, her voice firm. "Don't move. I'm coming." When she arrived, she took charge. Step 1. We secure the evidence. We photographed everything. She helped me freeze my credit, change my passwords, and file a police report. The official divorce papers came a week later. Signing them was the most defining signature of my life. That night, bathing Liam, he looked up at me with his innocent, trusting eyes and smiled. And in that moment, I didn't see David. I saw my son. I saw resilience. I saw a future defined by my love, not his betrayal. The war is far from over, but we are still standing. We are together, and we are learning how to be unbreakable. The door swung open, and for a single, suspended moment, the entire world froze. David stood there, our son Liam balanced perfectly on his hip, a reusable grocery bag dangling from his free hand. The image was so normal, so painfully, beautifully domestic. It was a picture of the life I thought we had, and it clashed so violently with the cataclysm that had just detonated inside my soul that I felt physically dizzy. Liam's face was flushed with fresh air and laughter, his little hands clutching a crumpled maple leaf like it was a treasured prize. "Hey, honey, we're back. Look what Liam found for you," David said, his voice a perfect, heartbreaking imitation of the loving husband he'd pretended to be for years. His smile was easy, practiced, reaching his eyes, until it didn't. His eyes adjusted to the light in the office, and they traveled from my face, stone cold and streaked with tears I hadn't even felt falling, down to the crowbar on the floor, across to the splintered, gaping wreck of his filing cabinet, and finally landed on the manila folder, splayed open on his desk like a gutted animal, its secrets laid bare. The smile didn't just fade, it was erased. His face went slack with shock, then tightened instantly into a mask of pure panicked calculation. I saw it. The exact millisecond he realized the game was over. It was in the subtle, defeated drop of his shoulders, the way his grip instinctively tightened on our son, the flicker of sheer, undiluted fear in his eyes before he could shutter it behind a facade of confusion. "Charlie, what?" he began, his voice losing its warm, homecoming tone, turning thin and defensive. "Liam, baby," I said, my voice surprisingly, terrifyingly steady, cutting him off. I didn't look at David. I couldn't. I kept my eyes locked on my son, forcing a calm, reassuring softness into my expression that I was miles from feeling. "Why don't you go show Mommy your leaf in the kitchen? We can put it in a little bowl of water to keep it pretty." I stepped forward, my movements deliberate and slow, and pried my son from his father's suddenly rigid arms. Liam, sensing the electric tension in the air, buried his face in my neck, his little body pressing against me. I held him tight, breathing in his innocent little boy scent of grass and sunshine, using him as my anchor, my reason to not shatter into a million pieces right there. I carried him out of that toxic room, down the hall, and settled him safely in his high chair with a sippy cup of juice and his precious leaf. "Mommy just needs to talk to Daddy for a minute, okay? I'll be right here, I promise." My heart was a wild trip hammer beat against my ribs as I walked back to the office. I left the door wide open, needing to hear Liam's harmless babbling, needing a tangible, pure connection to the one thing in this house that was still real and good. David hadn't moved. He was just staring at the folder, as if his gaze could somehow will the evidence inside it to disappear. I didn't wait for him to speak. I didn't need his lies, not anymore. I picked up the BMW registration from the desk. "Where is it parked?" My voice was low, flat, and icy. It didn't even sound like me. He flinched as if I'd struck him. "Charlie, let me explain." He started, his hands rising in a placating gesture that made my stomach turn. "The car, David." "Where is it?" I repeated, each word a chip of ice. At a long-term lot near my old office," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. "I was going to sell it. I was waiting for the right price." I picked up the loan documents, the ones with my forged signature. I held them up, my hand remarkably steady. And this. Were you going to explain this too? How you practiced my signature? How many hours did you spend on this, David? Was it before or after you held my hand and promised to love me forever? The dam inside him broke then. His composure shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he burst out, his voice cracking with a desperation that felt both theatrical and pathetic. It was for us, Charlie. For our future. I was investing. I had a tip, a sure thing from a guy at work, and I just needed a little capital to get started. I was going to pay it all back before you ever found out. I was going to surprise you with a vacation, with college money for Liam. He actually took a step toward me, his hands pleading, his face a mess of tears and self-pity. He was standing there in the wreckage of our life, quoting the mantra from his sick little notebook. It's for us. It's for our future. The sheer, staggering self-delusion of it made the room tilt around me. He had truly convinced himself that this was love. Don't, I whispered, the word dripping with a venom I didn't know I possessed. Don't you dare say that to me. You didn't do this for us. You did this to us. You lied. You stole. You committed felony fraud in my name. You risked our home, our son's future, everything I have worked for my entire life, for a tip from a guy at work. The tears came then, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of white-hot, incinerating rage. You looked me in the eye every single day and you lied. You let me thank you. You let me appreciate you for managing our money while you were systematically destroying it. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? You didn't just take money, David. You took my ability to ever trust anyone again. You broke the very core of me. He was crying now too, but his tears felt like just another layer of manipulation, a performance designed to elicit sympathy. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. Please, we can fix this. We'll sell the car. I'll get a second job. I'll work nights. I'll get out. The words were quiet, but they were absolute. They left no room for negotiation. He stared at me, stunned, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. What? Get out of this house. Right now. Charlie, this is my home. He's my son. He gestured wildly toward the kitchen, his voice rising in pitch. Right now, I said, my voice chillingly calm again. The rage banked into something colder and harder. This is a crime scene, and you are the perpetrator. You have two choices. You can walk out that front door, go to a hotel, and give me the space to figure out how to keep myself and my son from being financially annihilated because of you. Or, I can call the police right now, have you arrested for identity theft and forgery, and you can explain your sure thing and your investment tip to a judge. Which would you prefer? The color drained completely from his face, leaving a ghostly, waxy pallor. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and I saw the moment he realized the woman standing before him wasn't the Charlotte he knew. That Charlotte was gone, buried under a mountain of forged documents and broken promises. This woman was someone new, forged in the fire of his betrayal, and she was ruthless. Please, he begged, his voice a broken whisper, the last weapon in his arsenal. Your wallet and your keys. You can take your car, I said, my tone leaving no room for anything but compliance. I will pack a bag for you. You will be gone in 10 minutes. He stood there, paralyzed by the consequences of his own actions, a statue of shame and panic. I turned my back on him, the most powerful thing I had done yet, and walked to our bedroom. Our bedroom. The word felt like a joke. I pulled a duffel bag from the top shelf of the closet and threw in a pair of jeans, a few t-shirts, some underwear, and a toothbrush from the guest bathroom. I didn't touch his cherished, expensive suits, his collection of colognes, the books on his nightstand. I wanted no trace of his essence, his smell, his presence, left in this space to haunt me. I zipped the bag, the sound final, and carried it back to the hallway, dropping it at the front door like a piece of garbage. He was still in the office, staring blankly at the wall, a man witnessing the ruins of his own life. Time's up, I said from the hallway. He jumped, startled, then shuffled out of the office, his shoulders slumped in a performance of defeat. He picked up the duffel bag, his eyes searching mine for any sign of softening, for a crack in my resolve, for the woman who would forgive him anything. He found none. "I love you, Charlie," he said, one last, desperate, pathetic lie. The word liar was on the tip of my tongue, sharp and ready, but I didn't waste my breath. I didn't need the last word. I simply opened the front door. The bright afternoon sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a cruel contrast to the darkness inside. He hesitated on the threshold, the line between his old life and his new one, and for a horrible second I thought he might refuse to leave, might try to force his way back in. My hand went to my phone in my pocket. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. He saw the movement. He flinched. And without another word, he stepped out into the light. I closed the door behind him, the solid, heavy thud of the deadbolt engaging echoing through the silent house like a gunshot signaling the end of a war. I leaned my back against the door, my legs finally giving way, and slid down to the floor as the adrenaline drained from my body, leaving me trembling, hollow, and utterly spent. From the kitchen, I heard Liam babbling happily to his leaf. The sound was a lifeline, a tiny, pure melody in the crushing silence. I allowed myself exactly 60 seconds on the floor. 60 seconds to feel the full, overwhelming weight of it, the shock, the grief, the terror of the mountain of debt and legal nightmares that lay ahead. I cried, silent, heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside out, my body racking with the pain of it all. Then I wiped my face fiercely with the sleeve of my shirt. I took a deep, ragged, shuddering breath that filled my lungs with resolve. And I got up. My first call wasn't to a lawyer. It wasn't to the bank. It was to my older sister, Maya. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, Shar, what's up?" The sound of her familiar, safe voice broke the dam all over again. I tried to speak, to form a coherent sentence, but all that came out was a strangled, guttural sob. "Charlotte?" Her voice instantly shifted, the cheer replaced by sharp, protective alertness. "What's wrong? Are you hurt? Is Liam okay?" "Liam's fine," I managed to choke out, the words fighting their way past the tears. "It's David. He's gone." And then the story tumbled out of me in a disjointed, chaotic flood. The loans, the forgeries, the BMW, the locked drawer, the confrontation, his departure. I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, a hiss of pure fury, followed by a string of curses so creative and vehement it would have made me laugh under any other circumstances. "I'm on my way," she said, her voice firm, no nonsense, already in commander mode. "Don't move. Don't touch anything else in that office. Don't talk to anyone. I'm getting in the car now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Just hold on." The relief of having an ally, a general, someone to take the helm, was so profound that my knees actually buckled. I slid back down the door, but this time it was from relief, not collapse. "Okay," I whispered. "Charlie," she said, her voice softening just for a moment. "You did the right thing. You are so strong. Just hold on. I'm coming." I hung up and went to Liam, lifting him from his high chair and holding him close, drawing strength from his small, warm, solid body. I carried him to the living room couch, and we sat there, me staring into the middle distance, him contentedly playing with my hair, completely unaware that his world had just been fundamentally rewritten. True to her word, Maya arrived in 18 minutes. She let herself in with the key we'd given her for emergencies, her face a storm of fury and concern. She took one look at me, bundled Liam into her arms, and said, "Okay. Step 1. We secure the evidence." She was a paralegal. She understood the law. Under her direction, we didn't just leave the folder on the desk. We used my phone to take pictures of everything: the broken cabinet, every page of the loan documents, the vehicle registration, every incriminating page of the password book. She made me forward the credit score alert and the full loan details from the banking app to my personal email. She gathered all the original documents into a large, sturdy envelope and sealed it. "Now," she said, her hand firm on my shoulder, a grounding, steadying pressure. "We call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A shark who specializes in financial fraud and divorce. We need someone who knows how to draw blood in the water." While I sat with Liam, she made the calls from my phone, her voice crisp, professional, and intimidating. She secured an emergency consultation for first thing the next morning. Then she ordered enough food to last us a week, made another pot of strong coffee, and took over the running of my household completely. That night, after Liam was finally asleep, the house silent in a way it had never been before, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd received the notification that had blown my life apart just hours before. It felt like a lifetime ago. "What are you going to do?" Maya asked gently, pushing a cup of tea toward me. I looked down at my hands, then at the sealed envelope of evidence lying between us on the table like a sleeping serpent. I thought of David's pleading, manipulative eyes. I thought of the phrase, "It's for us," scrawled over and over, a testament to his profound cowardice and self-deception. I looked up at my sister, my voice clear and certain for the first time all day. "I'm going to war. The morning after your world ends doesn't arrive with a clap of thunder or a dramatic storm. It arrives with the quiet, persistent beeping of your phone alarm and the soft, sleepy sounds of your child in the next room. The world hasn't stopped. It's just become a different, harder, more complicated place. The war I declared last night wasn't a shout. It was a quiet promise to myself. And this was the first day on the new front lines. I lay in bed for a long moment, the weight of yesterday pressing on me like a physical force. The memory of David's face, first the practiced, loving smile, then the panicked calculation, flashed behind my eyes on a relentless loop. The sound of the deadbolt sliding shut, that final metallic thud, echoed through the silent house and the caverns of my mind. I drew a deep, shuddering breath. The air itself felt thinner, contaminated with the residue of betrayal, harder to pull into my lungs. Rising from bed felt like a monumental act of will. Each movement was heavy, slow, as if I were moving through water. I walked to Liam's room, my bare feet cold on the unforgiving hardwood floor. He was already standing in his crib, his chubby hands gripping the wooden railing, his face breaking into a brilliant, sleepy smile the moment he saw me. "Mama," that single, perfect word, brimming with unconditional love and absolute trust, was the fuel that ignited my resolve. In the kitchen, my sister Maya, my fierce, brilliant general, was already moving with a soldier's purpose. The rich aroma of coffee filled the room. She had Liam settled in his high chair, patiently feeding him. Dark shadows smudged beneath her eyes, but her gaze was sharp and burning with protective fire. "Okay, soldier," she said, sliding a full mug toward me. "Drink up. Our appointment with Eleanor Vance is at 10 a.m. sharp, not 10:01. Sharp Eleanor Vance, the shark." Maya had spent half the night researching. Known as the Sphinx, she was expensive, ruthless, and exactly what we needed. Choosing my clothes felt like preparing for battle. I reached for a sharp navy blue pantsuit, my armor. The tailored lines were a reminder. I was Charlotte Evans, an architect who built things to last. Eleanor's office was minimalist, intimidatingly clean. A space designed for one thing, winning. She didn't offer a smile. Her handshake was firm, brief, authoritative. "Charlotte," she said, "show me what you have." My hands trembled as I slid the envelope across the desk. For 10 minutes, only the sound of pages turning. Her expression remained a perfect, unreadable blank. Finally, she looked up. "Your first step, file a police report for identity theft. Today." A cold jolt went through me. "The police? But he's the father of my son." "He committed felonies against you," she stated, her voice icy. "This report is your shield. Without it, the banks will hold you liable for every cent. Secondly," she continued, "we'll file for divorce, fraud, and constructive abandonment, plus a restraining order." "A restraining order?" The words sounded so extreme, so final. He wouldn't, I began, but stopped. I'd thought he would never steal from me either. We operate on capability, not hope, she said. Sentimentality is a luxury you cannot afford. Leaving her office, I felt emotionally flayed, but mentally sharper. My to-do list felt heavy. 1. Police station. 2. Freeze credit. 3. Change passwords. 4. Serve David. The police station, harsh lights, worn floors. I reduced my catastrophe to checkboxes. "This is thorough," the officer commented. "My sister is a paralegal," I said, voice flat. He filed the report. The case number stared back, a cold label for my trauma. My shield. The next days, blurred, administrative warfare. Maya and I became a machine. Hours on hold, endless affidavits, changing locks, new bank accounts. Each completed task, a patch on the hole David had blown. But the war wasn't just on paper. It was fought when Liam would toddle to the door and ask, "Dada?" in his small, confused voice. It was fought in the empty space beside me in bed. It was fought with every unknown number that made my heart leap. A week later, he tried to contact me. An email. "Charlie, I'm at the extended stay. It's awful. I need to see Liam. We can fix this. I love you. Please. David." The old Charlotte screamed to respond, to hear him out. But the new Charlotte, the one who'd sat across from Eleanor, picked up the phone, not to call David, but my lawyer. "Forward the email," Eleanor said. "Do not respond. This is a test. Silence is your only response." Following her instruction was agony. The silence felt loud, cruel. But as hours passed, power grew in me. I was no longer reacting to him. I was acting for myself, for my son. The divorce papers arrived. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words made it terrifyingly real. But as I read, something shifted. This wasn't just an end, it was a claim. With a steady hand, I signed my name, my real signature. That night, bathing Liam, he looked up at me, water droplets on his eyelashes, and smiled his innocent, gummy smile. And in that moment, I didn't see David. I saw Liam. I saw resilience. I saw a future defined by my love, not his betrayal. The war was far from over. But as I lifted my clean, giggling boy from the bath, I knew we'd already won the most important battle. The fight to reclaim my life was no longer a declaration. It was my reality. And I was just getting started. The first court date arrived not with a bang, but with the dull, administrative thud of a scheduled hearing. A line on a calendar that had loomed over me for weeks. The morning of, my stomach was a tight knot of nerves and cold fury. I dressed in my armor, the same navy pantsuit, but it felt different today. It wasn't just a reminder of who I was. It was a declaration of who I was becoming. A woman who would stand in a room with the man who shattered her and not break. Maya drove, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Remember," she said, her eyes fixed on the road, "you are not the one on trial here. You are the plaintiff. You are the victim. He is the one who has to explain himself. Just breathe." The courthouse was a monument to solemnity, all echoing marble halls, hushed voices, and the oppressive weight of consequence. We found the right courtroom and stood outside for a moment, my heart hammering so hard I felt it in my throat. And then, I saw him. David was already there, standing with a lawyer I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit. David looked smaller, diminished. His shoulders were slumped, and he was clutching a manila folder to his chest like a life preserver. He saw me, and his eyes, God, his eyes were full of a desperate, pleading sadness. A part of me, the stupid, tender part that still remembered his hands on my face, twitched in response. Then I saw his gaze flicker to Eleanor Vance, who stood beside me, a statue of impeccable calm. And that sadness in his eyes was eclipsed by pure, unadulterated fear. He took a hesitant step toward me. "Charlie," he began, his voice raspy. Eleanor didn't even let him finish. She put a firm, gentle hand on my arm, steering me away. "Do not engage," she murmured, her voice low and steady. "He is not your problem to manage anymore. He is my opponent. Let me handle him." We took our seats at the plaintiff's table. The room smelled of old wood and lemon polish. The judge entered, a stern-faced woman with sharp eyes that scanned the room, missing nothing. The proceedings began, a blur of formalities and legal jargon. And then, it was time. Eleanor stood, her posture perfect. "Your Honor, if it pleases the court, we are here today on an emergency motion for a permanent restraining order and to establish temporary spousal and child support. The respondent, Mr. David Reed, has engaged in a pattern of financial abuse and criminal fraud against my client, Charlotte Evans." She laid it out, not with drama, but with devastating, factual clarity. She presented the evidence I had found, the forged loan documents, the BMW registration, the password book. She submitted the police report. She walked the judge through the $210,000 debt, line by terrifying line. She spoke of the betrayal of trust, the systematic dismantling of my financial security, the profound psychological impact. Her voice was a calm, relentless river, washing away any possible defense David could have. Then it was his lawyer's turn. He stood, clearing his throat nervously. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges errors in judgment. He was under significant financial pressure, trying to provide for his family. He has every intention of making reparations. This is, at its heart, a marital dispute that has spiraled out of control. A criminal complaint and a restraining order are an overreaction. He loves his son. He just wants to see his boy. Errors in judgment." The phrase was so weak, so pathetic, it was almost funny. $210,000, error in judgment. A forged signature was just a mistake. The judge listened, her face impassive. Then she turned her gaze to David. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice cutting through the stuffy air. "Your lawyer uses the phrase marital dispute. Forgery, identity theft, and the secret accumulation of $250,000 in debt in your spouse's name are not a dispute. They are felonies. Do you understand the difference?" David seemed to shrink in his chair. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just nodded, his face pale. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. She granted the permanent restraining order. She awarded me temporary full custody of Liam, with David's visitation to be supervised, pending a full psychological and financial evaluation. And then she turned to the matter of support. "Given the staggering debt Mr. Reed has unilaterally imposed upon Ms. Evans," the judge said, her tone icy, "and given his demonstrated lack of financial responsibility, I am ordering immediate wage garnishment. 50% of his net income will be directed to Ms. Evans for spousal and child support, effective immediately until such time as the debt he created in her name is satisfied." I felt the air leave my lungs in a quiet whoosh. It was real. The law was seeing him for what he was. It was believing me. The gavel fell. It was over. We walked out of the courtroom, the victors of this first crucial battle. David and his lawyer were still at their table, his head in his hands. As we passed, he looked up at me. There were no more pleas, no more "I love yous." There was just a hollowed-out look of defeat. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt a profound, bone-deep sadness for the man he had chosen to become, and a quiet, steady strength for the woman I was forced to become. Later that evening, the house was quiet. Maya had gone home, promising to check in tomorrow. Liam was asleep, his breathing a soft, even rhythm from the baby monitor. I was alone, truly alone for the first time since this nightmare began. I poured a glass of wine and walked to the living room window, looking out at the dark, quiet street. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. It was mine. And then, my phone buzzed, a notification from my banking app. My heart, conditioned now to panic, stuttered. I opened it, expecting another horror. It was a deposit, the first garnished wage payment from David's paycheck. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. It was a start. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I simply stood there, looking at the number on the screen, then out at the night sky. The mountain of debt was still there, looming and terrifying. The legal divorce was still ahead. the emotional scars, they would take a lifetime to heal. But in that quiet moment, standing in the sanctuary of a home I had reclaimed, I realized something fundamental. This was no longer about David. This was no longer about the lies he told or the money he stole. This was about me. This was about my resilience, my ability to get up, to fight, to build again. The story of David and Charlotte was over. It was a tragedy, written in forged signatures and broken promises. But the story of Charlotte and Liam, that story was just beginning. And I, the architect, the mother, the survivor, I was ready to draw the blueprint for our new life. A life built not on the sand of someone else's lies, but on the unshakable foundation of my own strength. And this time, I would build it to last forever. There is a strange, hollow silence that follows a victory, especially the kind you never wanted to fight for. The restraining order was granted. The wage garnishment had begun. The legal machinery was finally, grindingly working in my favor. But in the weeks that followed the court hearing, I moved through my life like a ghost in my own home. The constant, adrenaline-fueled battle was over, and in its place was a vast, echoing space I had no idea how to fill. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. The first garnished payment arrived in my new, separate account. I stared at the number on the screen, a direct deposit that represented both a lifeline and a monument to betrayal. It wasn't a windfall, it was a refund on a life I never purchased. With Maya's help, I created a brutal, new budget, a spreadsheet that laid bare the monstrous reality of the debt in cold, hard numbers. Every payment I made was a surgical removal of a piece of David's lie. But it felt like I was bleeding out in the process. Liam, my beautiful, oblivious compass, kept me grounded. His world was simple, immediate. He didn't care about credit scores or debt-to-income ratios. He cared that his favorite blue cup was clean, that his dinosaur chicken nuggets were the right shape, and that mommy would always, always come when he cried in the night. I clung to the borders of his small, safe universe, using his routine as a map for my own shattered days. Returning to work felt like stepping onto a stage where I'd forgotten my lines. The architecture firm buzzed around me, a hive of normalcy I could no longer access. My colleagues knew. I saw it in their eyes, the pity, the curiosity, the unspoken question. How did she not know? I held my head high, my trusty navy suit now feeling less like armor and more like a costume. I buried myself in blueprints and stress calculations. Designing structures that could withstand a 100-year storm became my therapy. If I could ensure a building wouldn't collapse, surely I could teach my own spirit to do the same. Driven by a restless, desperate energy, I began the purge. It started with the small, intimate things. His side of the bathroom cabinet, the expensive hair gel, the half-empty bottle of cologne that still smelled like the ghost of him. I bagged it all up, the familiar scents triggering a nausea that had nothing to do with sickness. Then, I attacked his closet. I kept a single, small box for Liam, a watch, a college sweatshirt, a few photos where David's smile almost reached his eyes. The rest of that life, the sharp suits, the silk ties, the polished shoes, I donated. Each item I removed was a weight lifted, a square foot of my own territory reclaimed. But the house itself remained the biggest problem, a beautiful, custom-designed cage. Every corner held a memory, every room an echo of his deception. I was trapped in the very asset I was supposed to be protecting, a prisoner of his financial sabotage. One Saturday, I stood in the garage, a can of paint in my hand. I had no plan, only a visceral need to make a mark that was undeniably mine. I chose the accent wall in the living room, the one we had painstakingly chosen together in a safe, neutral shade called warm sand. I covered it with a bold, defiant, oceanic teal. The change was jarring, a shock of cool color against the warmth of my past, and it was absolutely thrilling. It was no longer our wall, it was my wall. The purge of his things was complete. Now, the redesign of my life could begin. The next weekend, I called a handyman and had him take down the ugly modern light fixture David had insisted on. In its place, I hung a quirky vintage chandelier I found at a flea market, its crystals casting fractured rainbows around the room. It was imperfect and full of character, nothing David would have ever chosen. Maya came over and we pushed the furniture into a new open flow that broke the old stagnant energy. We were no longer just cleaning David out, we were exercising him, and then the first letter came. It wasn't an email. It was a physical, handwritten letter on thick, expensive stationery, its weight feeling ominously familiar in my hands. Eleanor had warned me he might try this. "The court order prohibits contact," she'd said, "but it doesn't prohibit mail. He'll look for any crack in the wall." My hands trembled. His handwriting was a script I had once loved. I stood by the kitchen sink, the paper hovering over the trash can, ready to tear it to shreds unread. But a cold, hard curiosity won out. "Charlie, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I've lost that right. I'm writing because I started therapy, the court-ordered kind. It's harder than I thought. I'm being forced to look at things I spent years running from. My therapist says I need to understand the why before I can even begin to atone. The why is a bottomless pit of shame. I was never the man you thought I was. I was a boy, pretending. And when the pretending became too hard, I started building a life on credit, literally and figuratively. I was so terrified of being seen as a failure that I became a criminal instead. I don't expect a reply. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I am, for the first time, seeing the rubble I created. And I am so sorry. Tell Liam I love him. David." I read it once, then again. The tears that came weren't for him. They weren't even for the US that was lost. They were for the tragic, pointless waste of it all. He was finally speaking the truth, and it had arrived a lifetime too late. The letter didn't bring closure. It was just another piece of debris from the wreckage. I didn't reply. I did exactly what Eleanor advised. I scanned it, emailed the digital copy to her for her records, and then I took the original paper, the one that had held his confession and his expensive pen's imprint, and I lit a match. I held the corner over the steel basin of the sink and watched his words curl into black, brittle ash, vanishing down the drain with a hiss. It was the most therapeutic, the most final thing I had done yet. That night, after I put Liam to bed, I stood in my newly painted living room. The teal wall glowed in the lamplight. The vintage chandelier cast dancing, prismatic shadows on the ceiling. The silence was no longer hollow. It was full of my own potential. The debt was still a mountain. The legal process was a long road ahead. The scars were still tender to the touch. But I was no longer just surviving the aftermath. I was no longer just fighting a war. I was building. I was designing a new life, not from a place of fear or reaction, but from a place of fierce, hard-won ownership. The blueprint was messy, and there were no guarantees, but every brushstroke of paint, every piece of furniture I chose, every bill I paid with money I had clawed back, was a line drawn by my own hand, on my own terms. The story of the betrayed wife was finally, irrevocably, fading into the past. In its place, a new story was being written, its first chapter etched not in lies, but in teal paint and reclaimed silence. The story of the architect, the mother, the survivor, and this story, this one was mine to write alone. 1 year, 365 days. It's a measurement of time that feels both impossibly long and like the blink of an eye. I mark the anniversary not with cake or celebration, but with a quiet ritual. I pull up the banking app on my phone, the same app that once delivered the notification that shattered my life. I take a deep breath, and I look. The number no longer sends a jolt of ice through my veins. The mountain of debt is still there, of course, but it's smaller, significantly smaller. Every garnished wage payment from David, every extra freelance project I took on, every conscious choice to live more simply, has carved away at it piece by piece. It is no longer a monster lurking in the shadows. It is a problem I am solving, an equation I am balancing, and I am winning. The sale of the house closed last week. It was not an ending filled with drama, but one of quiet, profound closure. Walking through the empty rooms for the final time, I didn't feel sadness. I felt pride. I had taken a structure filled with poisonous memories and transformed it into a home again. A home that another young family would now fill with their own laughter, their own dreams. The teal accent walls stayed. I left the vintage chandelier. They were my signatures on the canvas of that house. A final note that said, I was here. I survived. I made it beautiful again. With the proceeds from the sale, Liam and I moved into a bright, sunny apartment with a small balcony overlooking a park. It's smaller, yes, but it is ours. Every piece of furniture, every scuff on the floor, every drawing taped to the refrigerator is a testament to our new life, built from scratch on a foundation of honesty. Liam has his own room, painted a sunny yellow, and he runs through the hallway with a joy that is completely unburdened. He is thriving. He talks about his dad sometimes, during his supervised visits, with the simple, uncomplicated love a child holds. And I have learned to hold space for that love, separate from my own hurt. My career, it has blossomed in ways I never expected. The story of my resilience, it seems, had circulated, not as a scandal, but as a testament to strength. I was offered a lead architect position on a major community center project, a place meant to be a safe haven for families. The irony was not lost on me. I accepted. Now, I spend my days drawing blueprints for a building that will literally be a shelter for others. I pour all my hard-won wisdom into its design, making sure its foundations are deep, its structure is sound, and its windows let in an abundance of light. I received one final letter from David's lawyer last month. His sentencing for the identity theft and forgery charges was concluded. He accepted a plea deal that includes significant financial restitution and probation. He lost his professional license. He will be a felon. There was no sense of victory in reading that letter. Just a quiet, solemn acknowledgement of consequences. The scales of justice had tipped, slowly and grindingly, but they had finally balanced. The chapter of David is officially closed. And so, here I am, sitting on my balcony, a warm mug of tea in my hands, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Liam is building a Lego castle inside, humming to himself. This peace, this quiet, unassuming contentment, it is everything. If you are still listening to my voice, if you have walked with me through every heartbreaking discovery, every legal battle, every tear, and every small victory, then from the very bottom of my rebuilt heart, thank you. Your support, your comments, your shared stories, they were a lifeline when I felt most alone. You reminded me that my voice mattered. You helped me find the courage to keep going. And so, as I bring this journey to a close, I want to leave you with the moral lesson that has been carved into my soul. The truth I learned not from a book, but from the rubble of my own life. Trust is a beautiful, sacred gift, but it is not a blindfold. You can love someone with your whole heart and still look at the bank statements. You can be a team and still know the passwords. You can build a life with someone and still protect the foundation of your own independence. True love does not demand your ignorance. True partnership does not require your financial surrender. Let your heart be open, but let your eyes be open wider. Do not ever let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting the life you have worked so hard to build. Your safety, your security, your peace of mind are not negotiable. They are the non-negotiable pillars of your existence. My story is not a tragedy. It is a rebirth. It is proof that you can have your entire world set on fire, and from the ashes you can rise, stronger, wiser, and more powerful than you ever imagined possible. Thank you for everything. For listening. For caring. For being a part of my healing. This is Charlotte Evans, signing off with so much hope for your own beautiful, safe, and fiercely protected future. Be kind to yourselves. And never, ever stop building. Goodbye.